So what are some of the differences between the 2008 market crash and today's market shift? Well, let me explain, because I was actually doing business at that time. So number one, what most people don't understand about the pre-2008 market is that it was actually a buyer's market. It wasn't a seller's market. We had over 6 months of inventory supply, so there was plenty of homes for buyers, and buyers were actually walking away from closing tables with cash, all their closing costs paid, and very little cash to the table. And they were also getting home inspections, 45 to 60-day closing periods. All of that is very different from what we've seen in the past 2 years. In contrast to that, the past 2 years, the seller's market was actually accelerated due to a shortage of housing that has been going on and actually started over 10 years ago. So there is an extreme shortage of supply and there's more demand. And then the pandemic actually reduced interest rates to an unnatural level, which naturally, it actually qualified other individuals who never would have been able to qualify for a certain price point to buy a home. So it added so many more buyers to an already short housing inventory. And that's what caused the frenzy of 2020, 2021, and part of 22. So now that things have changed and the interest rates have gone up a little bit, we're actually seeing what's called a housing market correction. Another big difference between what was going on pre-2008 and what's going on today is predatory lending. So predatory lending is the reason why the market crashed in 2008, because starting from the early 2000s, financial deregulation actually allowed banking institutions to kind of create their own rules in a lot of ways. And what ended up happening, especially when the housing frenzy began to really take off, is that lenders were creating these products which were intended to entice people who were not otherwise qualified, who actually didn't have the income to afford a house, who actually didn't have the savings, and should not have been buying whatever that price house was to actually go and buy that house. So what they were doing is offering these predatory products, which offer so many great incentives up front, like come to the closing with no cash, the seller can pay for everything, they can actually finance more than 100% of the house value, and the income was actually, the verification process was very loose at that time. So a person who worked part-time at like a 7-Eleven can come in and say, hey, I make $100,000, and all they wanted was just a little printout letter saying that in a lot of cases. And there were a lot of agents and lenders who took part in this. So overall, financial deregulation changed massively after the crash, of course. And today's lending standards and guidelines are so much more stringent, and all of the people who bought homes last year and the year before can actually qualify and afford that mortgage. It's not that they couldn't afford the mortgage, it's just that because the rates came down, they actually could afford it. So that's a big difference. Now that things have changed a little bit and the interest rates are kind of ticking back up to where the normal rates are, we're seeing a lot of level out. There's also, because of post-pandemic changes, we're seeing a little bit more inventory in the market. So that's what's causing the market to level out. It's not crashing, and no economist is expecting or predicting that the market is going to crash. Although nobody can predict the future, and yet the indicators are all pointing to there's still more demand than there is supply.